Welcome to Take It from the Ironwoman. My name is Susanne Müller, your host and the Ironwoman. This podcast is about empowering yourself and others to make real changes in the world. You will hear from everyday, smart, sophisticated, hip people like you and me. Not everybody has to be an Ironwoman to impress the world. Together, we will learn from the sports and business leaders how you can become a more successful person as an entrepreneur or a leader. It's one step at a time, one day at a time. Take your steps now. Take your big steps now. Join me on this journey to success. Take it from the Ironwoman. We only have special guests, and today we have a fellow Mount Kilimanjaro climber with me. It's Bibiana Krall. Introduce yourself. What do you do, and how did you get to Mount Kilimanjaro? Hopefully, we can fit everything into 20 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And a fiction author, a multi-genre fiction author, and I tend to write speculative fiction, mystery, and paranormal because those are the things that interest me the most. When you're a writer, you spend a lot of time with your characters. But Kilimanjaro actually came about because I've always wanted to do this. But my husband's friend 2 years ago was invited with this huge group of people in Charlotte. We ended up moving to Charlotte for 4 months that we called the experiment because it did not go well. And we came back to Savannah because it's very costly to move these days. An entire household, we had to cancel everything. We were totally bummed because we were physically ready to go. We had to decide if it was important to us. We rebooked it for the following year, which was last June. And we started training and climbing all kinds of mountains all over North Carolina so that we could get ready, because in Savannah, we're only about 17 feet above sea levels. It's pretty hard to train for the elevation stuff. We were doing 1 day up, 1 day down mountains, like the tallest mountains in North Carolina.
How was the climb?
Well,
it's not easy to pack, but so you're 2 people.
I've done a lot of wilderness camping, literally where it's just like boots and you've got a jacket and maybe some water and a couple of sandwiches and you just go. That's not the smartest thing in the world to do, depending on the weather or where you are. I would not do that on Kilimanjaro. What happened was, it's really interesting because I trained really hard, but I didn't train properly. And how I say that is that my cardio was not where it needed to be once we got up to about 15.5. And I'm telling you, I was walking 6 miles every day in Savannah heat, which is 100 degrees, 97% humidity. It is awful. But even with that, I wasn't ready. And I didn't realize I wasn't ready until the first night was very interesting. But the second night, it was really steep and there were all of these weird lava flows or whatever. The footing was kind of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Instead of kind of getting your rhythm, the minute you got it, the terrain would change. And it was pretty steep on day 2 for us because we were on the Rongai Trail. And the Rongai is the trail that's on the closest side to Kenya. We could actually see Mombasa at night from the third cave. Day 2 for me, I don't know what it was. The day was extra hot. I was not doing very well on day 2 at all. I remember getting to my tent probably 2 hours later than they expected me to. And I just threw myself face forward. I was like, I don't even care. I still had my boots on. My boots were outside because it's so dirty. You don't want them in your tent, but threw myself face forward. And one of the guys that was part of our crew felt sorry for me. And he kept trying to shove this plate of fresh mango in through the little zipper thing. He didn't speak any English. He only spoke Swahili, but he kept saying, Miss Bibi, Miss Bibi. And he's trying to shove this paper plate. Oh my gosh, just give it to me. I ate it and I actually felt a lot better. But then I started really feeling the elevation because I'm allergic to sulfa drugs. So I can't take the medicine that almost every mountaineer on the planet takes to do this elevation. I was utilizing vitamin C, some kind of herb. It's an herb that the Sherpas use. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't take the stuff the other guys were taking. But when we got to about 15.5 at the third night. We were up there for 2 days. It was so high. You could see the sunset under the clouds. It was so amazing. Oh my gosh. Everybody was kind of crying when they were seeing it because it was just so beautiful. We did like I can't even say it, acclimatization climb on the first day. And I was pretty much okay, but I remember leaning down and trying to pick up a little plastic thing that was somebody left from like candy or something. And I was really mad that people were throwing trash on a sacred mountain. I leaned down to pick it up and it knocked the wind out of me. I know. And I was like, oh, the game has just changed. Because that was really a pretty easy day. But that night, my husband and all the guys, I was the only woman in this group.
How big was the group?
It was just Macon, my husband, myself, our porters, and our 2 guides. We had like 11 porters because we were paying them to carry big jugs of water because there was no water up on the mountain when we went up there. We were paying extra for that stuff. There was no water even if you wanted to get water and boil it. So it was like about 13, 14 men and me. From a woman's perspective, from a very stubborn, independent myself woman's perspective, I didn't want to be the one slowing everybody down. I didn't want to be the one who said, oh, I can't do this anymore. There was a lot of determination, but it was day 4 or day 5. We were at the saddle. And I'm sure, where did you summit? Which side did you summit?
We took the western route.
Does the western route go up to Kibo or to the other?
I don't remember. It was 10 years ago, so I don't remember.
There's 2 base camps. But anyway, we were only a mile and a half near Kibo, which is like the base camp for summit night. We stopped for something and I took a sip of mango juice. I literally said, I need to sit down. And I sat down on the ground and I blacked out like a light, no oxygen left in my body. And I woke up. I'm not sure how long I was out, but I woke up and there were 3 guys trying to put a pair of snow pants on me while I'm like passed out on the ground. My husband knew I was going to be okay when I started yelling at them to not touch my beep and get off me beep. You know, he's like, oh, she's going to be fine. That particular day is where it really got rough because there was no shade. There was really nothing pretty to look at. Everybody was kind of grim and quiet at that point because I'm a writer. For some reason, when we were in that particular part of it, I felt like we were sort of walking the way all of our ancestors walked over the ice floes. Like what they must have been thinking, how far does this go? Will I walk until I just drop dead? Is there an end to this? Please, could I see a tree or you start feeling that way right about there. It's really strange because the mountain itself, the summit, the peak is majestic. It has these beautiful clouds floating over it, and the sky turns these super deep shades of blue. And sometimes you can hear the wind making sort of strange, like whistly noises. It's just fantastic. Anybody who climbs this mountain and doesn't realize that they're on basically the physicality of an ancient goddess really needs to know this because you feel it once you get to that point. Once there's no foliage left and you're basically the only thing that's between you and the moon are some clouds in the top of that mountain. It's very sobering and very spiritual once you get to that point.
What I remember, there's a lot of rocks and rocks and rocks. One of the guides, that's what I always remember. He said, look at those rocks and sometimes you see faces in those rocks. They have a story to tell you. And now whenever I'm walking around, I look at the rock, I see things. And that was that Kilimanjaro experience. I keep that in my heart. This was special. And then the birds that came in the morning.
Oh, the white-necked ravens.
You have to get up now.
Yeah, we saw an eagle. We actually saw a bald eagle up there. And I called out to it because I grew up on a farm. I was making like crazy bird noises and it came back around to come see what I was. It was hunting. Came off the top of the peak. There is mythology with these rocks and with these caves. And supposedly there are these Middle Earth spirits that are almost like little men with oversized heads. Supposedly that's like part of the mythology. And supposedly they skulk around at night, but they all live in these caves. So like if you dared to go in one of these caves at night, you could be in big trouble. Like if they actually exist, I don't know. But there are still people who believe in that mythology, and our two guides were part of that tribe. So I felt very, very, very fortunate to have basically the protectors of the mountain as protectors of us as they took us up the mountain. And they were brothers, Victor and I can't remember his name. Oh my gosh. We spent so much time with these guys, but both of our guides were brothers, and they had about a 5-year period with each other. One was kind of serious. One was more of like the social guy who wanted to chit chat a little bit too much and was a little bit too friendly about like, let's hang out kind of time with everybody. So he was the youngest. It was Eddie and Victor. And my brain was, where'd they go? But they were wonderful. And we're talking about going back in 2026 to do the longer route, like I don't know if it's the Western route. I can't remember what it's called. It goes all the way around the top because we want to have a little more time to do it if we do it. The funny thing is, I struggled by day. My husband struggled by night. My husband struggled by night because he is hearing challenged, both of his ears. Because when he was 1, he had meningitis, and it basically made him almost completely deaf. He wears hearing aids on both ears, but because it's so hot on Kilimanjaro, we weren't even sure if his waterproof ones would do very well. His balance is by spatial with his eyes. When he walked out of his tent on that first night, everything was cloud cover. It was so dark. It felt like you were falling into a bottomless pit. It did something to him. It did something in the core of his body. And he came in the tent, and I'm thinking, because this is called Simba Camp. Simba is a lion. Okay. Yeah. There's a lion out there. All I have is a headlamp and a pair of tennis shoes. Okay. This is going to be interesting. That's what I thought was going on. It was some kind of giant wild animal or something, because it could happen there. It was the darkness. It was the darkness. Then there was like a whole question where we've only been here 24 hours. Should we keep doing this? Is it going to be like this every night? Is this going to get worse? It's really interesting because by day I struggled from just basically the heat and the oxygen, because I literally just can't even take the medicine that most people use to make it easier to cycle their oxygen. And I was terrified to take dried beets. And the reason I was, because dried beets are supposed to really oxygenate your blood. But apparently, if you trip and fall, you are going to bleed to the point that you might not get off the mountain. Okay, well, I have to find a different way to do this. You really have to do your research before you go on that mountain. You have to know your body. You have to know your strengths. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust your guides. And you also have to be able to say, because my husband did the pinnacle. I did not. I didn't do it. And the reason I didn't do it is because of the blackout that happened 15 hours or whatever before. My biggest concern was that something was going to happen to me somewhere along that very narrow area. And then they were going to have to basically put themselves in danger helping me. And I didn't want to jeopardize that for my husband, because he and I both, we were walking up the sides of ski lifts every weekend. We were eating lean protein and lots of triple, quadruple vegetables. We were doing everything you're supposed to do to get ready. So yeah, at the last minute, that's what happened. I was extremely disappointed in myself, to be honest, because this is like 5-6 months of training so hard. The whole thing is that when you go on that mountain, if you do this climb ego driven, you're in trouble. If you do it spiritual driven, sports driven, adventure driven, totally cool. No problem. But ego driven, that mountain will eat you alive.
That's it. Ego driven, leave your ego at home.
Yeah, you have to. That mountain, if you have an ego, that mountain will say, oh, this is going to be fun. What kind of weather can I cook up? What kind of animals can I send? And I knew that. I absolutely knew that. You have to ask yourself those questions when you're having trouble if you do have trouble up there, because I've heard about a lot worse trouble. I had 2 guys go on gurneys right past me when I finally got to Kibo, and they were young, in their 20s. Very fit-looking young guys.
Age doesn't...
It was ego-driven. They were going too fast. They weren't doing the pole.
I just wanted to say, what is the magic word? Pole,
Pole.
slow, pole.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what we always said when it got windy, when it was really hot, especially day 3 and day 4, I started saying Asante Sana Kilimanjaro, which basically means thank you so much. Because when these clouds would go across the peak of Kibo, it would bring this beautiful blast of 10 degrees cooler air. And I would think, okay, I can do another mile. I could do this, no problem. But if that wouldn't have come, I honestly, once you get to like 7, 8 miles and you're hot and you're sweaty and every man is like looking at you and you've got dirt on your face and you got dirt on your neck. I don't really care about that all the time, but it just got to the point after the 3rd or 4th day, I would have paid $1,000 just to have a 5-minute shower. I swear I would have. Cold water, a bar of soap. I would have anything. The clothes that we wore up there, a lot of the really good gear we gave away because apparently it's really hard for people to get that kind of gear or afford it over there. But some of this stuff, honestly, I threw it out because this thing's going to start walking up the mountain all by itself. I could just leave it here. It'll reanimate in the middle of the night and be some kind of like zombie. But yeah, Kilimanjaro is an incredible adventure that a lot of people could do this as long as they basically were able to walk long distances and, pace themselves. They knew their bodies and they left the ego behind. What's amazing about it is every single person has a different experience on the mountain. And that's what's so cool about it is you got it all together. You've been in business all these years. You have your degrees, you have your kids, you have your investment fund. You just got it all together. And you get on that mountain and that mountain couldn't care less. That mountain looks at you probably the same way like a giant rose bush looks at all the bees when they start headed for the same rose. The rose is one at a time, guys. And then if it doesn't like it, then it cooks up some interesting weather. And I really feel like that mountain has a soul. I feel like it's got this heavy duty energy. And because it's 3 peaks. So it's actually 3 mountains that made one mountain. And when I describe it to people, I call it the giant Hershey's kiss.
Yeah. That's true.
Because I don't know how else to describe it. But yeah, Kilimanjaro is absolutely amazing.
I love your story. We can talk forever.
I know.
Thank you so much for taking us on a journey, but also the Kilimanjaro. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for a lovely conversation on Kilimanjaro. So many stories. We could talk forever. Take it from the Ironwoman. We have episodes every Monday. Come and join us. Learn from other people. Scary stories on the Mount Kilimanjaro. But also download the book. Take it from the Ironwoman. Global Business Coaching with Sports Parallels. Thank you for your support and we'll see you next time.